Obviously, there's the ups and downs, and there's been points where a lot of people have left the space. What kept you on it? What keeps your conviction?
It's always very important to be realistic as well, between okay, we want to create definitely an alternative financial and political system in a way, on the one hand, but on the other hand, right, the entrenched elites and governments and regulators will actively fight the competition, because that's what crypto is.
Out of all the areas you could invest, why crypto?
I've been in crypto for now 11 years, so it's definitely changed a lot, to put it mildly. But throughout these whole years, I think there's always been this combination of immense financial opportunities, if you compare it with any other financial asset class, and also a mixture of radical innovation and technology, mixed with radical, borderline crazy ideas, and it's a lot of fun. So there is nothing else in the world with this combination.
We're in Dubai with Crypto Newsy and in partnership with Global Blockchain Show, taking place here in Dubai in December. Today, I'm with Angel Versetti. Angel, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on. I would like to start with a question that often comes to my mind. Out of all the areas you could invest, why crypto?
Oh, why crypto? Okay. I think generally speaking, so I've been in crypto for now 11 years, so it's definitely changed a lot, to put it mildly. But throughout these whole years, I think there's always been this combination of immense financial opportunities, if you compare it with any other financial asset class, and also a mixture of, radical innovation and technology, mixed with, radical, borderline crazy ideas, and it's a lot of fun. So there is nothing else in the world with this combination, right? Where there are some industries which are fun to do, but you don't earn money. There are industries where you earn a lot of money and it's boring as hell. People just try and make as much money as possible and quit. And then sometimes they quit with a bunch of psychological conditions or whatever. They go to Nepal, to Tibet, to Morocco to just, detox. But crypto is the mix of all these things. It's fun, challenging, changing the world, and the great financial opportunities. There's nothing like it. So I think that's one of the, basic reasons why, as they said in Godfather 3, I tried to quit so many times, but they pulled me back in, because I did try to quit crypto, thinking sometimes, now everybody's used to these bear markets, like, oh, hey, bear market, way through it. But that wasn't like that in the, when we talk about 10 years ago or 8 years ago. For a lot of people back then, what if you thought that, okay, that was game over, that was our small bubble, it burst, and it would have been scary. It was scary to be in the bear markets of, the early cycles in 13 and in 15 and 18, 19 even. You go through this, but generally you then notice that actually the more and more people use the opportunity to enter, and you see how everybody gets red pilled, as they say. So the more stakeholders enter, and you see a funny combination. It's become a meme now, right? About the kind of IQ distribution of the most successful people in crypto is like the lowest or the highest range of that is, the ones who make it either religiously just believe in whatever meme coin or whatever you're holding, or you got to be super clever to, create something radically, transforming the world. So because of all that combination, you meet people who are, crazy in a good way. So they come up with great ideas, and it's very hard to assess it as a traditional investor. But that's also intellectually stimulating. So you have to always change the way you assess your projects or startups. You have to try and even think, should we, should the whole framework or paradigm of assessment or due diligence change to invest in any particular opportunity? And for all these reasons, that's why I think investing in crypto is always exciting. Every year you have to, you start like a new person, basically. Things change so fast in crypto. I don't think you can be an expert in it. Like, you have to constantly learn, constantly be in the trenches. And this process it always forces you to be, on top of the game, because if you're not, you're going to get eaten. Yeah. And for all these reasons, it's exciting to be in crypto. That's why we keep investing in it, and we keep having fun, and we keep getting intellectually stimulated.
It's definitely entertaining, but it's also like high risk. So like throughout these years, like 11 years on it, obviously there's the ups and downs, and there's been points where a lot of people have left the space.
Yeah.
What kept you on it? What keeps your conviction?
Yeah, I have met quite a bunch of people who mined Bitcoin back in 2009. When it was pennies, I think, and they had ridiculous amounts of Bitcoins back then. And yeah, and they, for them it was like a fun experiment. And then when there was the first major crash, I think in like early 2010, they just sold and they didn't look back, or they were too worried, because from their perspective, this little experiment back then, it was a little experiment. They felt like, okay, that was game over, and many quit, or some sold their Bitcoins for what at that point of time seemed like a reasonable objective. I'm going to sell my, whatever, 1 million Bitcoin or, a few 100,000 Bitcoin for and buy an apartment, right? Mm-hmm. And that made sense, right? When people made 10 or 20x, whatever they did, and it crashed, and it psychologically makes sense. So a lot of them, quit financially, but many, for instance, stayed to work on Bitcoin as a hobby, or as a as a hobby, or as a belief, I would say, right? Because many people are in Bitcoin for ideological reasons. So I have met quite a few of those people who basically sold what today would be a multi-billion-dollar worth of Bitcoins. And yeah, it's a lot of them, of course, it kind of impacts you psychologically that, oh, you sold life-changing amounts of money. So yeah, you have, obviously, some of those people became bitter, and they, some of them have left entirely, some of them just focused on technology. Others, in later years, of course, there were multiple cycles of first, different Bitcoin forks launching. Some of them did amazing returns as well. You could have 1,000x. There was projects like Syscoin that did amazing returns from just a 500K market cap that started. There were NXT. There were some other, coins that are no longer there, which, yeah, you could put one Bitcoin and get like 1,000 Bitcoin in a few months. But then, of course, you could also lose it all. And people, it's like you said, it's high risk. So for a lot of people, it's it's somewhere, if there is like gamblometer, right? Pure gambling and crypto is somewhere very close to each other, to casino or whatever. But yeah, so of course, a lot of people got burned. It enabled new sophisticated ways of scamming people, and everybody got very creative. And of course, this continued through the years, right? In the ICO cycles, and then in the DeFi summer, and then today meme coins, rug pools. So it's the sophistication and variety of scams is always evolving. And of course, for a lot of people, during those times when they lose a lot of net worth, they quit. Also, you, of course, have regulatory clampdown. So in crypto, especially every year, every cycle, the governments, regulators, they understand crypto more and more. So they find ways to counteract it, to fight it, or sometimes to bend the laws, really, to try and, get the crypto players to play according to their rules. We now have obviously examples of Pertsev, the dev from Tornado Cash, being imprisoned for writing the code that was used to, allegedly commit crimes or money laundering. But then, okay, you could say that in that case, Mark Zuckerberg should be in jail too, because somebody might have used Facebook to solicit child prostitution or some other illegal activities, right? So it's you can see that crypto is being treated very arbitrarily. So a lot of people also either stay underground or they quit because of this regulatory heat. So it's always very important to be realistic as well, between like, okay, we want to create definitely an alternative financial and political system in a way, on the one hand, but on the other hand, right, the entrenched elites and governments and regulators will actively fight the competition, because that's what crypto is. Bitcoin and crypto and Web3 is a competition to a lot of existing structures, and they force people to quit. Yeah.
Do you... I'm interested in understanding like which part of it is like tied to like, let's say, your core values. Like, why are you so passionate about this industry? Which part of it really resonates with you? I'll give you an example. Some people are on it because they don't like the structure in which like governments operate, banking operates, like this whole world structure in which we live, society. They truly believe that this needs restructuring. There's people on it for other reasons. There's more superficial reasons. There's reasons that are more like related to, going even deeper, like network states and so on. What is yours? Where do you stand?
Yeah, so I definitely appreciate the core values on which Bitcoin was created and launched, which is self-sovereign ownership of funds, censorship resistance, disintermediation, and freedom of speech that it enables. And why it enables freedom of speech is very simple. If you say something wrong or unconventional or not fitting the traditional framework in the traditional world, you can get debanked, because banks, they look at your reputation all the time, and their definition of reputation is whatever they want it to be. And they may have people with very poor reputation, to put it mildly. They can have terrorists, they can have drug dealers, they can have people committing genocides. They may still have bank accounts. There are plenty of examples where it was discovered that the groups aforementioned have consistently used banks. But actually, hey, you try and say something that doesn't fit the current political narrative, you can get debanked. And there are plenty of examples of Nigel Farage was debanked. Recently, Ripple CEO, I think, talked how he was debanked by Citibank. So you have prominent figures both in crypto or just in politics or whatever. Whether or not I disagree with these individuals, but they just say something that doesn't fit the narrative, they get debanked. In many countries, you get debanked. You are basically deplatformed from the system. Your insurance can't pay you, any benefits or tax things or whatever, this bureaucracy and paperwork. Then you immediately have a lot of headaches. And if you don't pay your taxes on time, you commit a crime by default. And then it's a way to ensnare people in this labyrinth. So from that perspective, with Bitcoin, you can say whatever the hell you want to say, and your Bitcoin will not deplatform you for that. So I think that's the way it enables freedom of speech. Of course, the general value proposition of that, with what you could do on top, with proper censorship-resistant blockchain for wider political applications, is also amazing. I mean, blockchain has been used, and I do mean, when I say blockchain, I mean a truly censorship-resistant blockchain that cares about values of decentralization. I would argue today, Bitcoin, maybe Syscoin, maybe Dogecoin are the only chains that do respect that. Even Ethereum, I would question that. There have been a number of changes they have done over the years where it's a lot less censorship resistant. But the programmability, at least, that Ethereum initially proposed and offered is amazing for different applications. For example, land titles in many countries are not reliable, or they can be just rewritten by corrupt officials. And there have been so many claims by people losing their land or real estate in more corrupt countries because there's no single trustworthy register of real estate ownership, right? And for many countries, that offers hope that if you put your land titles on blockchain, that could make it less susceptible to that corruption. Similar to voting in countries where vote rigging is happening all the time, if you do it on chain, where it's truly immutable, you can't. It's a lot harder, and should be impossible if it's using Bitcoin, for instance, to falsify or amend the votes that take place. So Bitcoin and blockchain, in the truly decentralized sense of that word, can be indeed transformative, can make democracy truly resilient, more participative for the little guy, for the everyday person. And of course, the financial ownership of, sovereign ownership of your finance is important. And the next step of that I see is sovereign ownership of your data, because we now have entered the age of AI. The AI has consumed all the publicly available data there is. Every major AI has already trained on any data they could get their hands on. They're now trying to source some more closed source data or unique data to train their AIs. And in the end, so of course, data will become even more valuable than it is today. And now it's controlled by the big tech, right? The Magnificent Seven or whatever, Google, Amazon, Facebook, these companies. So, and they own your data. They own your email. They own your social media profile. They own all the content you've produced. And all of their AI is training on that stuff. So what blockchain can do, and why there is excitement about Web3 and AI conversion, is that we could make the sovereign ownership of data a reality as well. And I'm very excited about it on the one hand, but on the other hand, like you said, there are many people for whom the value of crypto today is just like, oh, hey, we can make money, we can have fun, or it's just kind of like I'm against the system play. And people tend to forget about the values of censorship resistance, of disintermediation, why it's important, or privacy of your funds. People tend to forget that. And I think most crypto users of today, they are, they don't really think about it too much. They care about like, okay, which meme coin to flip, or, what other fun farming applications there are, but they don't think about the broader picture. Can this all be taken away from me? Are these instruments, actually using to collect information on who does what, who trades in what way? And, at some point can be used against people as well, right? Because I think something may be training on all this data about how people trade, how people make decisions, and how emotions affect people, because meme coins are all about emotions, right? I've heard enough panels over the last few days here at conferences. Meme coins, why meme coins? Emotions, joy, people having fun. So the question should be, who and why is, funding? Because there's money, right? They are pumping. So money or value has to come from somewhere. So it might be a very big experiment for some structure, to actually try and run a big experiment to see how emotions affect people's financial decisions or investing decisions. And then once the model or whatever AI is, learning on all this, once they understand how it works, maybe the population can be entirely controlled about how they make any decision in their life.
As you go through your life, and I'm sure like everyone has like different circles. I would imagine that yours, compared to some of our previous guests, must be very different. One, because where you're based, and then two, because of your trajectory in life. And so it would be interesting to hear from your personal perspective, if there is anything peculiar that almost everything you've said aligns with the standard person in crypto, at least like the high level, let's say. So it would be interesting to see if you have any, what we would call like a hot take, like something that you, not many would agree with you, but this is how you see it, or this based on what you've heard or experienced, you develop this line of thought. Maybe it's something you're still debating, something new, something recent. Do you have anything like that?
Well, yeah, I didn't realize my thoughts would coincide with those with a lot of people today. Maybe they use the same terms and the same values, but
it aligns. I wouldn't say you're like perfectly matched.
Right. Okay, interesting. Because at least, I don't actually necessarily listen to a lot of speeches that people make, but I like getting under the hood of the blockchain or of the infrastructure. And that's where I find a lot of answers. Do they really care about decentralization, right? So even the whole thing with Solana, no matter how hard they try to say, oh, hey, we have a lot of nodes. Well, who's running these nodes? How many servers using how many providers are operating those nodes? And by the way, to be fair, those same questions can now be asked from Ethereum as well. And like I said, Ethereum has also made, in my opinion, a number of divergences from their original plan, and made those sacrifices in terms of decentralization. So I think last time, this was maybe a year and a half ago, there was a report that said something like 85% of validators are on 3 providers only. So they're hosted by 3 providers only, which is Microsoft, Google, Amazon. So that you basically have those 3 colluding to shut down services or whatever. It's game over for decentralization. Ethereum RPCs, so the most popular RPCs, and MetaMask, they already enforce OFAC, the sanctions of the DOJ of the United States. So that's already showing that they have already aligned themselves with kind of the banking sector and the US quite a bit. But in terms of the actual under the hood, when you look at under the hood of a lot of blockchains, hey, your smart contract has an admin who can, control the supply or can freeze tokens on any wallet. You can talk all you want about, your values, but like when your smart contract has that feature, the question is why. And there are plenty of those questions to ask. So that's why, for me, it's important when I assess a chain, does it truly stand for those values it promotes? And on my unconventional take, well, I don't know, it's not unconventional, but like it's more niche. So we are excited. When I say we, I mean my group of companies. We are excited about how science in particular can be disrupted by Web3 technology. And we have been running a number of experiments over the past few years about how to encourage the scientific progress using Web3 technologies. It's something that like a larger number of people are looking into it. It's called DeSci, decentralized science, whereby you try and use the Web3 technology or the community building of crypto and DAO's framework to encourage co-creation, sharing, monetization of scientific endeavors. You try and enable scientists and researchers to see how they could monetize their data or their research or any endeavors that are not funded by traditional sources. And traditional sources are obviously universities, governments, and large companies. So it's whatever doesn't fit the narrative of the stakeholders, of the governments and corporations. How could crypto enable scientists to research that? And we focused on one particular niche, longevity, life extension technologies, which is a very exciting area in my opinion. And it's now, it's had a few also kind of cycles of its own of hype and then, kind of dissipating. But now with advent of AI, there is actually a promise that AI may help accelerate a lot of this research. And there are already plenty of groundbreaking companies doing drug development, clinical trials, assessment of images, of clinical or medical images, and finding, being orders of magnitude more efficient than traditional stakeholders. So we believe that with that AI progress, you could actually try and tackle, try and fund this niche, which is still dismissed by most doctors and a lot of big pharma companies as this is voodoo, this is, snakes, oil salesmen kind of people. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and crypto has already enabled a lot of scientists. We actually have given a number of grants from our organizations to different scientific groups out of Harvard, out of Oxford, mostly kind of Ivy League universities in the States and Oxbridge, to try and encourage them to experiment with how their research could be accelerated through crypto. And we now do that also using kind of AI technologies. And I think that for me is one of the overlooked areas of crypto, and it does have a bunch of challenges. And this year, more VCs, crypto VCs, in their annual reports, they did mention DeSci as their, this year's narrative. But this was for this year, right, for 2024. So when they published it in December last year, they say, oh, DeSci, half of them did mention it as a big narrative, emerging narrative, but we didn't see that necessarily translate into the growth of projects or VCs actually willing to fund these projects. So if you look at where they put the money, they didn't put that much, if anything, into DeSci.
I saw that also, actually, yeah.
So from that perspective, I think that area deserves a lot more. It does have a bunch of challenges. Like a lot of this is hard to monetize. A lot of scientists are difficult to incentivize. They're mostly people who don't care about financial incentives. They care about, if they're true scientists, right? They care about the actual progress they can make, research. And sometimes it gives them a bit of a tunnel vision. Like I'm so deep into my research, and you're trying to tell them, well, try and, broaden your scope and like see where your research could be applied or how you could partner with somebody, etc. But it's often challenging. And the universities, obviously, especially the elite universities, and we have dealt mostly with those kinds of universities, of course, they're very protective of their scientists. They want the R&D to flow in the traditional, funnel. They want it to go to the big pharma or governments or their own framework. And they, of course, don't like crypto. They have still a very negative, last few discussions I had at Oxford was mostly very senior people saying that, well, crypto isn't that what drug dealers use, etc. So they still have the same old preconceptions. But I still think that DeSci is one of those areas where a lot more people should focus on and try and help, bridge those communities, because if you do unlock the value of science, of peer-to-peer knowledge sharing, peer-to-peer reviewing, data monetization, collaboration, you could unlock science, and science could progress humanity by light years. So that's one area I want to particularly put more emphasis on.
I think one segment within that, and before we wrap it up, is there's obviously these people that are like also experimenting with health and not necessarily health, but psychedelics and that sort of thing. And I feel like that crowd, oddly enough, could be part of the ones that actually fund this and take this forward, because decentralizing science, within science, there's health, and there's, all the drugs and all the experimental stuff you can do with health. So I find that interesting. Is there anything around health specifically that you are interested in within DeSci?
So Well, longevity that I mentioned, this is kind of a subset of health tech, and that's the one that excites me the most because it radically rethinks how the whole healthcare sector is built. Because the pharma companies of today, well, I have a very particular view on pharma companies. I used to run a company which was at that time the largest blockchain for pharma industry. So we did work with some of the largest pharma companies in the world. I won't name them, but you can imagine what they can be. And basically, yeah, we've seen the business models, we've seen how they think, how they generate money. So I have a very cynical view of the healthcare industry. They're not there to make you healthy. They are there to, like any business, right? They want you to be their customer for life. So whatever they fix in you, they break something else so that you could come back later for some more drugs. And because of that, obviously, it's they basically their mindset, even if we take my views on the industry away, is just generally the current approach is you wait till something is broken, till a person has a certain health condition, and then you try and fix it, right? You try and give them some drugs to make a person healthy, whilst actually longevity dictates that it should be preventive, right? It should be treatment before you need it. That's a lot more efficient. Once you break something, it's harder to mend it rather than if you just take good care of it before. People know it. People know it about boats, but people don't know it about their own bodies, right? So that's one of, like common sense things that seem commonsensical, but most people ignore it. Another approach is, of course, you have healthcare has another, in my opinion, very parasitical and scammy industry next to it, which is the insurance industry, which is holding the healthcare industry in its choke. Because in my opinion, it's even more powerful in some ways because like the mix of this financial industry and obviously they work closely with governments in terms of, how the rules and regulations are made to take money from the people for, some good purposes in theory. But you do have, the health insurance industry dictates a lot of things about how treatments are covered, how treatments are paid for. And of course, their industry is absolutely not aligned and not prepared for this preventative medicine and so on and so forth. Thirdly, because of their large scale, they care about, treating the healthcare industry and the drug producers. They produce drugs that are suitable for the largest statistical kind of unit of people. So whatever is good enough for the largest chunk of people, that's what you typically you buy in shops when you buy a medicine against headache or against anything else. And the problem with that is that you typically have a large group of people, depending on a country or a sector, it can be anywhere between 10 and 40%, who are genetically, for instance, they have predispositions that make that particular drug not suitable to them. That's why I have so many people who take some drugs against illnesses and like, it doesn't work on me. Well, actually, because if you did look at their genetics or just took a broader picture of their biomarkers or of their other conditions, you might realize actually that medicine, whilst it's good enough for most populations, not good enough for this subset of people. And that personalization of medicine is entirely, it's only restricted to kind of usually very high very expensive segment of medicine. But for most people, it's like, okay, you take paracetamol, or take ibuprofen. People just take the most popular drugs against anything. I've seen, even personally, I've been to doctors where they would give me paracetamol or ibuprofen for like, dude, I don't have a headache. I need something more specific here.
Yeah.
So it's pretty scary. And of course, for people who don't have, thankfully, if you do have, financial means to just go to another GP and get another opinion, it's great. But if you actually, GP costs you money, and if it's a limited budget for you, you do listen to the first person you meet. You may also have to take time off work to go visit that GP that may not be compensated for you. So for most people, it's not great. So longevity can offer a more personalized approach. If you do have a system that gets sufficient data about people, genetics, epigenetics, their cell aspects, their basically biomarkers and some other aspects that could give you a more holistic picture. Mm-hmm. But does the current system want that? No, I mean, they make money on just mass producing these drugs. So again, they're actively preventing this development. And there have been, similarly to how Google acquires a lot of startups that make a competition for them and then they kill them. There's this Google graveyard.
This format is very famous. I mean, even the record labels will get the new artists on board to then like stop them.
Right.
This is very interesting. Look, the whole personalization around healthcare, whether it's through longevity or just even like giving personalized medication, I feel like that's going to be a condition of technology as well. I would love to continue this conversation, but time is wrapping up. So for everyone watching, and if they want to talk about this stuff more with you, where can they find you? Can refer to this camera here.
Well, I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. That's pretty much it. So
Just what's your LinkedIn?
Angel Versetti, same as my name.
Yes.
What is my Twitter? Angel Versetti, same as my name. So I'm not anonymous KOL. Yeah, people are free to reach out to me and speak more.
Angel, thank you.
Thank you.